Let me read to you a passage from the 6th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 45 to 52. It's the Gospel for Wednesday after the Epiphany. St. Mark writes, "Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on the land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. About the 4th watch of the night, he went out to them walking on the lake. He was about to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, 'Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid.' Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened." That's from Mark chapter 6, verses 45 to 52. Among other things, it suggests to us that God is with us. What do I mean? Let me begin this way. You know, the city of Vienna has had a distinguished record of giving birth to schools of thought, including psychiatry. One such was that which was spearheaded by Viktor Frankl, the founder of logotherapy and one-time lecturer of the University of Vienna. His most famous book was Man's Search for Meaning. According to the New York Times of November the 20th, 1991, this book was, at the time, one of the 10 most influential books in the United States. At the time of Frankl's death in 1997, the book had sold 10 million copies in 24 languages. According to Frankl, the book is designed to answer the question, how was everyday life in a concentration camp reflected in the mind of the average prisoner? In his career in psychotherapy, Frankl debunked the theories of Freud, Adler and Jung, which understand man as driven by instinctual urges, such as sex, power and vague ancestral archetypes. And he put his finger instead on man's fundamental requirement to make sense of life. He needs to see a meaning in things. The modern tragedy, Frankl thought, was that there is now a widespread existential vacuum, a lack of meaning needed to make life worthwhile. This meaning is, he thought, something that each man must find for himself, importantly, through his conscience. Well, this obviously vindicates the importance of a religious faith for the happiness of man. It is indisputably an advance on Freud, Adler and Jung in that it places the emphasis on what, with conscience leading the way, one ought know, rather than just on one's instinctive urges. Frankl was a Jew, yet his theory has received widespread endorsement from Catholic sources. And in proportion to this favour coming from the Church, the Freudians and Adlerians tend to reject him. However, of course, the further question must be determined, and it is of the utmost importance. It is not enough just to have a sense of meaning. Each person must conscientiously seek the true and objective meaning of things, most especially that which God the Creator has revealed. The Christian message is that the meaning of life is found in accepting Christ and his teaching, and bringing one's life into total alignment with his revelation. It is God who gives meaning to things, not just any God, but the God who revealed himself and his plan for man. You know, there is a scholarly view of the sacred name of Yahweh as signifying both his ineffable being and his undying presence. The awful I am, Yahweh, is not only the one who is, I am, but is also the one who is always there, the one who is with his people always. I am with you. He is the one who is with us. This priceless revelation reached its permanent fulfillment in the person of Jesus Christ, who is, as the Gospel of St. Matthew calls him, God with us. This is perhaps the key point, that in Jesus Christ, God is with us. He who is love, he who so loved the world, is with us always, whatever may happen. Reason can attain something of an insight into the incomparable immanence of God to each of his creatures, but his closeness to us is revealed in vivid detail in the person of Jesus Christ. No matter what might happen, Jesus, my God, my brother, my Redeemer, is with me. As St. Thomas More put it, though I lose my head, I'll come to no harm. This is the meaning of things, and it is the true and objective truth of the matter. In our Gospel today that I read earlier, our Lord sends his disciples ahead of him while he dismisses the crowds. Then he goes up the mountain to pray. The disciples do his bidding, and as a direct result of doing his bidding, they land in difficulties. But they were under the gaze of the Master. He was watching. As we heard, as we read, when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on the land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. They were not alone, but they did not know this. They would have thought that they were indeed alone. And this is the trap we can all fall into if we allow our faith to weaken. What a difference it would make to every predicament we are in, even if we do not manage the situation to our satisfaction, and even if we are actually submerged by it, if at every point, right through to the very end, we know that God is with us in the person of Jesus Christ. That is surely a lesson of our gospel today. In the midst of their difficulties, Christ knew and was watching. Nothing could separate them from him. We know what happened. In the event, he chose to come to them across the water. Let us imagine him walking on the waves, rising and falling with the waves, striding quickly and masterfully, looming closer to the boat and pausing. Courage, he said to them, do not be afraid, it is I. If Jesus Christ is an objective fact to us, if we realize his objective presence in our lives, even if unseen, then there will not be any existential vacuum in us, whatever be the tribulations that descend upon us. Though I lose my head, I'll come to no harm. Let us renew our appreciation of the risen and glorious Jesus, God with us, though unseen. Let us, as did the disciples, receive him into our boat and allow him to be the master of our lives and of all that might surround us.